My name is Lila Morgan. I'm 34. And I don't really know who I am anymore. That's not the dramatic kind of lost myself you say after a breakup or when you dye your hair red and buy a plane ticket. I mean, I genuinely feel like I'm disappearing, quietly and politely. Like a book being slowly erased, page by page, but the spine still looks fine on the shelf. I didn't mean for any of this to happen. And I definitely didn't go looking for her. I've lived next door to Audrey and Daniel for 6 years. They're married. Or were, maybe. The timelines get messy if I try too hard to lay them straight. What I can say, what's been eating me up, night after night, is that I thought I was just their neighbor. Just Lila from 3B. Nothing more. Until Audrey started knocking. Before her, before all this, there was Liam. Liam and I have been together for 9 years. We were one of those couples people call solid. You know the type. The ones who tag each other in memes about laundry and still hold hands on escalators. I used to fall asleep with his chest under my cheek like it was the only place I belonged. I still remember how his hand always found the small of my back when we cooked together. And sex? It was never wild, but it was warm, alive, real. We knew each other's rhythms. But over time, something frayed. It wasn't loud. No fights. No slamming doors. Just little shifts, barely noticeable, until they were everything. The goodnight kisses grew shorter. The good morning touches turned into habit instead of desire. He still touched me, but sometimes it felt like being checked off a list. I'd lean into his hug, and his arms would stay stiff. Once, I kissed his neck in the kitchen and he flinched, just a little. But I felt it like a slap. I started pulling away, even while staying close. Because how do you ask your partner why their body doesn't want yours anymore, without sounding desperate? Without feeling pathetic? I told myself it was just a phase. Stress. Work. Hormones. Something fixable. But part of me knew, and didn't want to know. That's when Audrey started showing up. It was harmless at first. Just a knock on the door around 10, sometimes 11. Always barefoot. Always with a glass of something in her hand. Sometimes wine. Once hot chocolate. One night, ginger beer. I never asked why. She said Daniel was working late. Or being cold. Or that she just didn't want to be alone. I'm not trying to be weird, she said once, flopping onto my couch like she belonged there. You're just easy to be around. I laughed. Because who says that? But I also kind of understood. I needed someone easy too. Someone who didn't look at me like I was failing to be enough. At first, we just talked. About everything and nothing, the way women do when they're pretending not to ache. But then one night, she tucked her legs under mine. It was innocent. Her skin was warm and I didn't move. I didn't want to. A week later, she hugged me goodbye. Longer than usual. Her lips brushed my cheek in a way that felt uncertain. Like she was waiting to see if I'd flinch. I didn't. That night, when I crawled into bed beside Liam, he was already asleep. His back to me. And I felt this sudden, unbearable silence in my own chest. The moment I knew something had changed was a Thursday. Audrey knocked just after midnight. I opened the door and said, without thinking, I was hoping it was you. She looked at me for a long time. Her eyes soft. Searching. And then she stepped inside without a word, placed her head on my shoulder, and we just stood there in the hallway. It wasn't a kiss. It wasn't sex. But it was something. Something I hadn't felt in a long, long time. And in that stillness, in the quiet thud of my heart and the scent of lavender in her hair, I realized I wasn't disappearing after all. I was changing. Liam's a trauma nurse. Night shifts. Long shifts. The kind of work that grinds a person down and makes them forget to call, forget to ask how you are, But still remember to buy oat milk and put your favorite blanket in the dryer because it's been cold lately. That's the kind of man he is. Thoughtful in action. Absent in presence. And for a long time, that was enough for me. But lately, it's felt like I'm living with someone who knows me but doesn't see me. Like I'm just part of the furniture he's grown used to. Comfortable. Predictable. Always there. He tries. I know that. Like the other night, I'd just come back from walking Audrey home. We hadn't done anything. Not really. Just sat too close on my couch again, drinking tea, our knees touching. I came in quiet, unsettled, full of thoughts I couldn't say aloud. Liam was half asleep on the couch. When he saw me, he reached out and pulled me onto his lap. "Missed you," he mumbled, kissing my neck. It should have been sweet. It was sweet, except it felt out of sync. Too much, too fast, too late. His hand slid up under my sweater and I flinched. Not because I didn't want to be touched. But because I wanted to talk first. To be asked, "How was your day?" To be seen. But that's never how he connects. So I played along. I kissed him back. I smiled when he murmured, "You're so beautiful when you're tired." And I hated myself a little bit for how hollow it felt. After, he curled around me in bed, his hand on my hip, already drifting off, and I just stared at the ceiling, wondering what it meant that I felt lonelier with him than when I was alone. The misunderstanding happened 2 weeks later. I had stayed late after work. Took a long walk. Didn't text. I just didn't want to go home yet. When I walked in, Liam was waiting, arms crossed. "Audrey again?" he asked. The edge in his voice was quiet, but sharp. I blinked. "What?" "You've been spending a lot of time with her lately." "It's different." I wanted to laugh. Not because he was wrong, but because he was finally paying attention, and the first thing he noticed was Audrey. I told him it was nothing. Just neighborly stuff. Then I added, "You've barely touched me for months, and now suddenly it matters where I go?" His face tightened. "That's not fair. I touch you all the time." "I try." "But you don't talk to me," I said, suddenly shaking. "You don't ask me anything. You don't even notice when I'm not okay." He came to me, put his hands on my shoulders. "I'm here right now." And I don't know why, but I hated that sentence. Right now. As if that made up for all the times he wasn't. I pulled away. "Lila," he said softly, trying again, running his fingers through my hair like he used to. "I love you, you know." I nodded. But all I could think was, "You love me the way people love old things. Familiar. Useful. Not exciting." And I didn't say it. I couldn't. Because what kind of person feels this way and doesn't even know if she's allowed? That night, Audrey didn't knock. And I hated how much I missed her for it. It was a Sunday. One of those lazy, overcast afternoons that used to mean board games and pancakes and Liam leaving his pager on silent for once. He'd just come off a 36-hour shift and was wired the way only sleep-deprived nurses get, jittery, clingy, and oddly cheerful. I was curled up on the couch with a book I wasn't really reading, wearing the old hoodie he loves on me and mismatched socks. He walked in, kicked off his shoes, and flopped down beside me, pulling me into his lap without asking. "Missed this," he murmured, burying his face in my neck. I smiled, because it's what you do when someone says something sweet, even if it lands wrong. His hand slid around my waist, then down over my hips. I tensed. He noticed. "What?" he said, trying to sound playful. "Too much." I gave a small laugh and shook my head, but my body didn't relax. He pressed a kiss behind my ear, then lower, his breath warm. My skin went cold. I started, but stopped. I didn't know what came after that. "You're beautiful, Lila," he whispered. "You know that, right?" I nodded, looking past him to the window, to nothing. He kissed me, gently at first. Familiar rhythm. But I wasn't in it. I was too aware of how I wasn't reacting, how I should be. Of how his hand kept drifting, how his mouth waited for mine to open, how I was, performing something that used to be real. He kissed me again, a little firmer, and I let him. But inside? Nothing. Just silence. When his hand grazed my thigh, I felt the air leave my lungs, not in desire, but in exhaustion. I pulled away slightly, trying to make it casual. I'm just tired. He leaned back, looking at me with that confused disappointment that somehow always makes me feel guilty. Okay, he said softly, clearly trying not to show frustration. Sorry. We sat there in awkward silence, his hand still resting on my leg. Not moving. Not affectionate. Just heavy. And I hated myself, for pulling away. For not explaining. For needing something I couldn't name. But mostly, I hated how small I felt. How small this love had become. My eyes flicked back to my book. The same page I'd been on for 20 minutes. I could feel his gaze, searching my face, waiting for something. And all I could think, louder than anything else in the room, was, why does everything have to turn into sex? It happened on a Friday night, one of the rare ones where Liam had made a reservation and remembered to tell me about it in advance. He'd picked that little Italian place down on Glenwood, the one with string lights and overpriced ravioli, and when I came out of the bedroom dressed, he actually smiled and said, "God, you look stunning." I said thank you. I even meant it. For a second, it felt easy again. But then came the car ride. The silence between us swelled with everything we weren't saying. He kept trying, complimenting the music, pointing out how the rain made the street look romantic, and I kept nodding, half there. My smile had gotten good at showing up without me. At dinner, he ordered for both of us like he used to, confidently, with that crooked grin. It was a thing he did when we first dated, and I remember finding it sexy then. Safe. Like someone who knew what I needed before I did. But now, I just felt managed. When the wine came, he lifted his glass and said, "To us." To getting back to who we were. That was the sentence. I blinked at him, glass in hand. Something lodged in my throat. Who we were. I repeated. He smiled, still hopeful. Yeah. You know. Before all this, distance. And I laughed. Not a cute, flirty laugh. A sharp, bitter one. Too loud for the small table. The kind of laugh that made the couple next to us glance over. What? He asked, eyebrows raised. I don't even know who I am anymore, Liam, and you want to toast to a version of us that doesn't even exist? My voice shook. He froze. Where is this coming from? From the fact that I can't breathe around you anymore. I hissed. From the fact that I flinch every time you touch me because it feels like the only thing you ever see is my body. Not me. Not what I need. His face changed, hardened. His mouth opened, then closed. A pause. That's not fair, he said, carefully. You shut me out, Lila. I try, but you're always somewhere else lately. I looked at him. Really looked. And for a moment, I hated him for not knowing where I'd gone. And then, just like that, I started crying. Right there in the middle of dinner, mascara smudging, shoulders trembling, hands gripping the edge of the table like I was trying not to fall off the earth. He didn't reach for me. Just stared. Silent. Like he didn't know whether to comfort me or defend himself. Which somehow made it worse. We drove home in silence. No music. No words. Just the sound of windshield wipers dragging across the glass. Back in the apartment, I shut the bathroom door behind me and leaned against the sink, breathing too fast. My reflection looked tired, puffy, older than I remembered. And the shame came in waves. Why did I ruin it? Why couldn't I just accept the effort he was making? Why couldn't I be touched without flinching? Why did I keep retreating into thoughts of Audrey, her knocking on my door, the way she looked at me like I was whole? I thought I was just the neighbor, just someone she came to when her husband was unbearable. But maybe I was retreating into her because she saw me. And Liam, as much as he loved me, hadn't looked at me like that in years. I wiped my face with the hem of my sweater and whispered to no one, I don't know how to come back from this. It's been 18 days since the dinner. I've counted, not on purpose, but because each day has been marked by what didn't happen. No touches. No real conversations. Just, did you eat, and I'm heading out, and the occasional clink of two people sharing a kitchen like strangers. He moved to the couch that night. Quietly. No speech. Just took his pillow and walked out of the bedroom like he didn't want to make it harder than it already was. I didn't stop him. But I watch him. I watch the way he gets ready in the morning without humming anymore. I see how he takes longer showers now, not because he needs to, but maybe because he doesn't want to face me. I hear the way he sighs when he thinks I'm not listening. And every once in a while, I catch him looking at me. Not angry. Not cold. Just, tired. He hasn't asked about Audrey. I don't know if that's trust or surrender. We pass each other in the hallway like people in a waiting room, polite, detached, holding our breath for whatever comes next. And I miss him. God, I miss him. Not just the version of him from the beginning, not just the Liam who made me coffee exactly how I liked it, who kissed me behind my ear without needing a reason, who called me honey like it was a prayer. I miss this Liam. The real one. The one who has nightmares after a bad shift. The one who sings 90s R&B when he does laundry. The one who once cried because we saw an old dog limping in the park and he couldn't fix it. But I don't know how to reach for him anymore. Because now, every time I open my mouth, I hear myself weaponizing honesty. And every time he looks at me, I feel like a mirror reflecting back everything he thinks he's failed at. This morning, I stood in the doorway while he laced his boots. His work bag was by the door. His face looked older somehow, more weathered. I wanted to say, I'm sorry. I wanted to say, I miss you. I wanted to ask if we were okay. Instead, I said, you have lunch? He nodded. Yeah. Grabbed something on the way in yesterday. And that was it. He left without kissing my cheek. This afternoon, I sat on the floor in the hallway for a long time. The exact spot where Audrey used to stand when she'd knock. She hasn't been back. And even if she did knock now, I don't think I'd open the door. Not because I don't care. But because I finally understand that I can't escape myself through someone else. I used to think what I wanted was to feel seen. But maybe what I really needed was to see him again, not as someone who failed to love me right, but someone who's been drowning just like I've been. I don't know if we can go back. I don't even know if we should. But tonight, I have to decide. Do I walk back into that living room, sit next to him on the couch, and try, really try, to talk? Or do I start packing? Either way, I can't keep living in this quiet war zone. I have to choose. That night, I didn't knock. I just walked out to the living room and sat down beside him on the couch. Liam was still in his scrubs, half watching some muted wildlife documentary. A lioness was stalking through the tall grass, silent and terrifying and beautiful. We both stared at it like we were afraid to break the silence. I tucked my legs under me. I don't know where to start, I said. He didn't look at me right away. He just exhaled, not angry, not impatient. Just tired. Then he said, start with the truth. So I did. Not all at once. Not perfectly. But enough. I told him I felt invisible. That I missed being wanted, not just touched, but desired. That I didn't know how to say any of it without sounding like I was blaming him. His jaw tensed, but he listened. When I said, I think I've been disappearing, his eyes finally met mine. I noticed, he whispered. Then he told me the things I hadn't seen, how he'd felt like everything he tried just made things worse. How he'd started staying at work longer because at least there, people needed him in ways he could understand. That he hadn't stopped loving me, but he'd stopped knowing how to show it. And somewhere in the middle of all that honesty, I cried again. But this time, I wasn't alone. He reached over, slow and careful, and put his hand on mine. Not possessive. Not sexual. Just steady. It was the first touch in weeks that didn't make me flinch. We sat like that a long time. Eventually, he leaned over and rested his forehead against mine. I don't want to keep living like this, he said. But I also don't want to pretend everything's okay. Me neither, I said. There wasn't some grand promise. No declarations or vows. Just a quiet agreement that something needed to change, and maybe, if we were honest and gentle and a little braver than we'd been before, we could find our way back. That night, he didn't sleep on the couch. He crawled into bed beside me, careful as if the sheets might tear. He wrapped his arm around my waist like he was asking, not assuming. And when he kissed the back of my neck, soft, hesitant, I closed my eyes and didn't pull away. It wasn't a solution. But it was a beginning. And for the first time in months, that felt like enough. You know what no one tells you? That love can slip through your fingers while you're still holding hands. It doesn't always come crashing down with betrayal or screaming matches. Sometimes, it just erodes quietly. In the pauses. In the too quick kisses. In the nights spent back to back, pretending to sleep. For a long time, I thought desire was about touch, about being wanted, being pulled close, being kissed hard in a hallway. But now, I think it's about being understood. Being seen when you're quiet. Being heard when you haven't said a word. Being chosen, not out of habit, but intention. Liam and I, we're still figuring things out. We didn't break, but we bent so far I wasn't sure we'd find our shape again. And maybe we won't end up together forever. But for now, we're both trying. With more honesty. More space when it's needed. More courage to say, this isn't working, before resentment fills the silence. And as for me? I've learned that I can't disappear just to keep the peace. I've learned that love isn't a prize you earn by being low maintenance, or quiet, or sexy at the right time. It's work. Beautiful, messy, daily work. And I deserve to be met halfway. So if you're listening to this and you feel like you're vanishing in your own relationship, like you're shrinking just to keep it together, please hear me, you're allowed to want more. Not just more affection. More connection. More truth. More you in the middle of it all. Because the truth is, I thought I was just the neighbor. But maybe I was the one knocking on my own heart this whole time.